no one cares if you feel like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it anyway. Like, do it anyway. The first time I heard that was from Andy Frisella, who's become a mentor of mine. And this idea of just do it anyway. Like, no one cares how you feel. No one cares if you don't want to. No one cares if you don't feel like it. No one cares if you're tired. No one cares if if you're sick. Like, you just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about those defining moments. Defining moments sounds like it's some like huge, like great, like earth-shattering event, but those defining moments are throughout your day. They're, hitting snooze versus getting up and your alarm goes off.
Yep.
It's, choosing to go to the gym instead of, hanging out and doing nothing. It's, that 30 minutes after lunch where you can kind of have that kind of lazy period where you're just scrolling through social media, or you could get right back to work. Like, they happen, so many times throughout a day, but each time that you make the right decision in those defining moments, it builds momentum into the next.
This is the Real Talk University podcast, where your hosts, Andre and Christian, explore success stories outside of the classroom.
I'm Tyler Harris. Pleasure to be here on the podcast. Love what you guys are doing. Man, I just consider myself an ordinary guy doing extraordinary things by putting in the extra. And that's just putting in a disgusting amount of work on a daily basis. And I'm in the insurance industry. So I own 2 life insurance agencies. That's where I kind of got my start. From about 4.5 years ago, was in a really, really bad place. You can call it rock bottom or whatever cliche you want to use. But I'd gone through a failed marriage, a failed business, was just in a really tough spot. Some mentors came into my life, and it was really one of those moments of taking personal responsibility and taking ownership and understanding that I was exactly where I was supposed to be based on the decisions that I had made. And from there, the next 12 months made over 300 grand, the next 12 months over 450, the next 12 months over 650, and then became one of the owners of our agency and have launched multiple agencies since then. And so this is all, taking course over the last 4.5 years. And so started documenting my life on social media 2 years ago as a way to pay that forward for what those mentors did for me. Wanted to do that for others in some way, shape, or fashion. And so we have gone all in on that. We've got, 2 podcasts, a daily vlog, weekly vlog, multiple motivational channels, things like that, where I don't monetize a single thing. Put out over 5,000 pieces of individual content on each platform in the last 2 years without asking anything for anyone or anyone for anything. And that's just the way I believe it should be done, kind of following the Gary Vee blueprint. And just the fact that I don't need anything from anyone. I just want to pay it forward and want somebody to get that little spark that they need to make that same change that I made 4.5 years ago.
That's amazing. How do you kind of balance all that? I mean, you have 4 different things going on and they're all pumping out a ton of content. So, I mean, do you have like a schedule set up or anything?
Man, it's just, I don't believe in balance. I just believe in going all in all areas. So I think it's more to me about recognizing the imbalances. How quickly can you recognize the imbalances and adjust accordingly? I've got a wife, I've got a daughter, I've got other things that I'm involved in. And it's just about maximizing my efficiency and maximizing the amount of work that I can put in a day. And then taking that same approach to when I'm home with my family and when I'm spending time with my daughter and when I'm spending time with my wife and when I'm doing the other things that I do. And I think that that's a common misnomer is this idea of balance being that you have to take away from something. And usually it's the conversation is having to take away from work. Like, oh, I need to, be at home with my family more, meaning that you need to work less, which is ridiculous. If you need to be with your family more, just be with your family more. It doesn't mean you need to work less. You may need to, play less, and you may need to have less leisure and less extracurricular activities. May need to sleep less. But the idea that balance means that work has to, subtract somehow is absurd.
Right. And like before you kind of mentioned rock bottom. So could you kind of tell you how those setbacks have kind of set you up for success now and how they motivate you?
Oh, they 100%. I mean, I'm so grateful for all of those struggles that I went through. I know that looking back now that they happened for me, not to me. and turned me into the person that I am today. Like my failed marriage, my wife had an affair, went through a very difficult time with that. And I know that process made me a better husband. I know it made me a better father. That failed business that I had made me a better business person that I am today. And so you have to look at every opportunity or every obstacle as an opportunity to grow, because no one grows when things are easy.
Yeah.
You only grow when things are difficult. You only grow when you're faced with some level of suffering or some level of discomfort. So I almost get excited when things get difficult now, because I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be able to use this later on, or, oh man, something big is coming, because it's almost the more difficult it is, the more the blessing is on the other side of it.
Definitely, like the bigger rewards. So for people that might be going through some of these pains and tribulations that you experienced, like what are some things that you did like in the moment, as like when you first experienced them, that helped you to get through it?
The biggest thing is realizing that it was all my fault. Good, bad, or indifferent. That was exactly where I was supposed to be because of me.
Yeah.
And, I get pushback, especially from men, when I talk about, like, with my marriage, like my wife had an affair. And I said, well, that was my fault. It's like, oh man, that wasn't your fault. She did this, she did that. I'm like, well, let's think about it. If I'd been the absolute best husband on the planet, if I had created the greatest environment in our home possible, would that affair still happen? Possibly, but probably not. And so that's my fault. And I take complete and utter ownership of it. The business that I had, the failure, it was something that most would perceive as out of my control, but everything's in my control because it's my business. And it's just a mindset thing that you have to take ownership. And the encouragement in that for someone that's going through something is that if you got yourself into this situation, you can get yourself out of it. Like that's the entire encouragement of taking ownership. And, for years I played the blame game. For about 2 years, I was just playing this blame game of, my wife did this, my business partner did this, this happened to me, these things happened to me. But the second that you take those fingers that you're pointing at others and point them back at yourself is the second that you can break free and finally move on and do something about it. So that for me is the big thing. It's just understanding that you are exactly where you are because of all the decisions and the things that you've done.
Right. I think it's incredibly hard for anyone to sit back and kind of not play the blame game and just accept that it's your fault, which I give you a lot of credit for. So
yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but I mean, that's life. Like everything, anything great is going to be difficult. And, it's not until hindsight that you usually realize these things. But what I want people is to realize it on the front end. What I want people is to realize before everyone's headed towards a storm, coming out of one, or they're in it right now. I just want to reach those people that are in it or headed towards it to be able to know these things that I know from being past it, that there is hope and that there is a blessing on the other side of it. But until you become the person that can receive it, and that's what that struggle is for. It's to mold you and shape you into the person that can receive the blessing that's on the other side. If you know that, it gives you incredible hope when you're in it. Like, man, this sucks right now. Like, this situation I'm going through is unbelievably difficult and there's a ton of pain involved. And I'm empathetic to that. But to know that the tougher it is, like that this is molding me, and I may not understand it next month, next year, maybe 10 years from now, but there will be a moment that I look back and I'm like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I know exactly why I went through that. It's so that I could go through this today with ease. And to me, that's the most important part of growth in your life.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem now is that a lot of people just talk about the end result of it, like you were saying, but like we're super grateful that you actually take us through what actually happens through the process and how to cope with it and kind of, break through, because not a lot of people touch on that.
Exactly.
Well, because that's social media kind of 101 for you.
Yeah.
People don't want to show you the real. And that's why I chose to document my life on social media, because I saw this gap, for the average person to get on social media that just wants to grow, wants to be motivated, inspired, or wants to actually learn something. There's really only two types of people they can look to. One's the multi-millionaire that, congratulations, that's awesome, but their infrastructure and lifestyle is unrelatable to the average person.
Yep.
No fault of their own. Like that's what you want to get to eventually. And so there's that. And then there's the other type of person, which is the person that's completely faking as though they're that.
Yep.
Which is like 99%.
Exactly. And there was no one in the middle. There was no one in the middle showing what it really takes to be successful, showing the good, bad, and ugly. And so, 2 years into this journey, I'd gone from being unemployed, broke, in debt, to 12 months later making over 12 months later making over $450,000 in income. And at that point, I wasn't to the level of being multi-millionaire, but I had done something unique. I had done something that was credible, like going from being unemployed to making over 450 in 24 months is unique.
Yeah.
So I knew that I needed to document as much as humanly possible in that moment so that I could relate to everyone. And then as I level up and level up and level up to the point to where one day I am where I should not be relatable, I'll remain relatable by hopefully bringing people along the way with me. Like hopefully people will level up as I level up. But at the very least, they would have watched the entire process unfold. Like they would have watched Gary Vee from day one, not from age 38 on.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to show people is the actual truth. And there's, a lot of that's difficult and it's vulnerable, but that's the most powerful stuff you can put out.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I can't agree more. That's kind of what Christian and I are kind of set out to do as well, because, we're only 19, we're college students.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no pretending here that we know everything about business, none of that. Like since we started the podcast, the first thing we set out to say was that we're going along this journey with you guys. Like we're learning with you guys. We're interviewing these people and learning from them as you're learning from them and just stuff like that. So it's trying to be as real and as authentic as possible, because that's what people really need to actually change.
Oh, it's 100% what needs to change. And it's the reason why I'm so excited about what's about to happen in the economy. As things begin to crash and get extremely difficult, then all those people that are out there faking it are going to have a little less ad spend to throw behind all of this crap that they're putting out there. And they're going to have less of a lifestyle that they can portray to pretend to be what they're not. And so that shakeout is what really the world needs.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that the real people can shine.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then switching gears. So a major focus is obviously on college and like the aspects of learning outside of college and in the classroom. So I like was researching you and I realized that you went to Clemson, right?
Yep.
So have you like taken any of those skills you learned while at Clemson and applied them to where you are now?
It's interesting. I was a marketing major, and I would love to say that there was certain things that I could remember and pinpoint, like, oh man, what I'm doing right this second. Like I remember when I learned about that my sophomore year. I don't know. I'm not one that just completely hates on the education system though, because I think college it's such a formidable time period in your life where you just learn and grow just from the social aspect,
right.
How to operate on your own, how to, handle a schedule, how to handle, prioritizing and just life. But an interesting thing, so I paid my way through school. I had a landscaping business. And I got to where I just had dwindled it down to where I had one very large commercial client, and I would have to work that every weekend. It was like 2 hours away, and it would take me literally like 26 hours to mow and do all the landscaping for this gigantic property. It was like 17 acres and just tons of stuff. So I did it every weekend. And the interesting thing was my dad, he's always been like a lifelong learner, like, the Nightingale Conan, old tape series. And then when it came to CDs, but most of them were like literally tapes. He had like a library in our house because he just had every single one that was ever created. Wow. So while I was on the mower for 26 hours every weekend, that's all I listened to. And so I often joke around, but it's very real, and say that I learned more on a lawnmower than I did the 4 years that I was in college. But looking back, I think it was a combination of the two. But like I know things that come out of my mouth, daily, that I'm like, I remember the first time I heard that when I was just mowing a lawn, and I heard, Robert Kiyosaki or Brian Tracy or Zig Ziglar or Harvey Mackay or these people say these things that now are just a part of my, normal dialogue.
Right.
So, I don't know if there was a specific class or lesson that I learned in school, but I think school definitely prepared me for life. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's a lot more outside of school that will prepare you in a more tangible way while you're also studying.
Definitely. And I think for a lot of our audience out there, they're college students, a majority of them. And obviously this podcast is geared towards entrepreneurs, those trying to start businesses. And so you started a business or ran a business while in college. So was there anything that, you kind of use, any tools or tips you would say to them to kind of manage the time and balance between having a business and college? Or was it just kind of,
I mean, I think it's so personal to each individual person, because I mean, it depends on, the type of revenue that you're bringing in with that business and what's the best use of your time. I mean, for me, prioritizing is a big key, and prioritizing the most revenue producing activities, within our business is
yeah,
huge. And so, when you're at a crossroads of where you're deciding, like, do I study for the next 3 hours or do I work for the next 3 hours? Well, what does that 3 hours of work produce? Does it produce 10 grand? Well, that sounds pretty interesting.
yeah,
Or does it produce, $150 where maybe you would be better off studying for those 3 hours so that you don't fail an exam that's coming up? I think that all depends on kind of aspirations and what people want to do with their degree. Like if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or somewhere where that diploma is going to hold weight, then it's important to make sure that you get, solid grades. And I think I had like a 3.4 in college. So, I mean, I was happy with that. I studied a lot during the week. But when it came time to work, I was focused on work. And so I tried to separate the two. I didn't really try to mesh them, which I think may be a good lesson for people, that, you have to go all in those areas and be solely focused. The idea that you can multitask is a joke.
yeah.
Multitasking does not exist. And so you have to just be able to get laser focused on one thing, then move on to the next and be laser focused on that, rather than just be scattered between multiple things and you end up getting nothing done.
Yeah, I think multitasking is like the enemy of efficiency too, because you're not focused on one thing, so you're really not getting something done. Like at least one of the things aren't getting done as to the maximum potential, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're big into sales. So I was just wondering kind of how you started to get into the sales business, basically.
So, when I was in that period of my life, it was that rock bottom period of my life. As I had made this transition and started working on myself first, and really just the self-development and growing as an individual from the inside out, some mentors came into my life. It was 3 guys, and they really kind of saw more in me than I saw myself at that time. My confidence was at an all-time low, kind of going through what I had gone through. And I kind of jokingly say that if they were in like the rubber band business, that I'd be the greatest rubber band salesman sitting in front of you today. But they were in the insurance business. So like literally that's the only reason why I went into insurance, is because they were in the insurance business and they gave me the opportunity. It was the exact opportunity that I needed, because with my confidence being at an all-time low, the business that they had was very transactional and very fast-paced. So I could go out and I could put in a bunch of work and immediately get a reward, which would build my confidence. And I could go put 2 times the work and get 2 times the reward, which would build my confidence even more. And it became addictive. And so, I just at that point put my head down, went to work. I didn't even change my career or job title like on my personal Facebook profile, because I didn't want anybody, like I didn't want to talk to anybody about what I was doing. Like I just put my head down and went to work, and I was on the road over 200 nights a year in a hotel, working 16, 18, sometimes 20 hours a day, just absolutely flat out getting stuff done. Sold over 8,000 life insurance policies in 3.5 years, face-to-face, one-on-one.
Amazing.
So that means I sat down with probably like 10 or 11,000 people in 3.5 years face to face, which is absolutely insanity. But it's what I need. It's what I had to do. There's a lot of power in something having to work. Like when it has to work, and it had to work. Like I was broke. I had to borrow the money to get started in the business. And so, and I had a brand new wife, and we had aspirations of having a child, and we had a house, and like it had to work. There's this analogy I love to use about, a tightrope walker. If somebody walked in while we're doing this podcast and they're like, hey, there's this guy outside, and they set up this, line and a big net, and he's tightrope walking out there. She come check it out. I'm like, that's cool. But he's got the safety net, right? Like somebody came running in my office right now and said like, hey, there's this dude and he's walking across this line with like no safety net. And like, it's freaking 100 feet in the air. Like I'm saying like, sorry guys, I got to go. And I'm running outside to watch that, because when there's no safety net, like that's when like everything is exciting to me.
Yeah.
And that's when you get that choice when your back's up against the wall, like you can, the whole fight or flight, like you can make this happen, or this can be one more failure to add to the others.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for people to realize just the difference of being where you are now and then how you were when you first started, obviously working super long hours. It's what's necessary to build like the platform of where you are now. And people, like I said, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. People look at the end result, but don't really see what went into producing that result.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I started documenting on social media, I wanted people to understand that. And I wanted the people to really get to know me in an authentic and transparent way. So like January 2017 was when I started, really going all in on social media. And I really started on Facebook primarily because at the time Instagram didn't have Instagram Live, and then it was like immediately disappearing. Now it's 24 hours, but Facebook Live stayed there forever. And so in 2017 I did over 400 Facebook Lives.
Wow.
And I would use it as an accountability tool, which I think this is key for people that are listening. I used it as an accountability tool. You can use social media as an accountability tool. I would get on there late Sunday night or early Monday morning, and I would go on live and I would say, what's up guys? This week, my goal is to sell 75 life insurance policies. I'm going to be headed down to Atlanta, Georgia in the morning, or I would do it as I was driving, like, hey, I'm headed down to Atlanta right now. And I've got this many meetings. Goal is to sell 75 life insurance policies. And then Monday would come, and I would kind of recap every now and then throughout the day. And at the end of the day, I'd say, all right, day 1 of 5. And today I sold 17 policies. So, pretty much right on track. Day 2, I would recap and I'd say, hey, today absolutely sucked. Like I got kicked in the teeth today. I only sold 4 policies and now I'm way behind on that goal. And I'm pissed off about it. I'm not happy about it, but you know what? I got to recoup and start fresh tomorrow morning with a new outlook and figure out what I did wrong. Day 3 on Wednesday, I would recap and I'd say, well, today I absolutely crushed it. Sold 40 policies today. So now I'm right back on track. And day 5, I'd go through this. And then at the end of the week, I'd tell people, and I would be honest. Like there were weeks where I didn't hit my goal. And I would tell them that I didn't hit it and that I wasn't happy about it. And I could have just as easily been like, oh yeah, I crushed my goal. Like I'm the best. And no one would have known. But I was honest and I was transparent. And some of those conversations on live like were super, super vulnerable. Like I can remember one where I was sitting in my car about to go into my hotel. I had set out this big goal. I was going to be gone for 11 days. And I was about to walk into my hotel room for like the 10th night in a row. And I'm in tears. Like I had a 6-month-old daughter at the time. I'm in tears because I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like that's the last thing I want to do right now is go back in this freaking hotel room, for the 10th night in a row, being away from my family, being away from my daughter. But I set out this, huge goal. And, if I'm going to be out here and suffering and away from my family, then I might as well hit the goal that I set. And, that's as transparent as I can be. Like, hey, this sucks. I feel like I'm down right now. It's not like getting on there and being like, as soon as the live goes on, like, being all sad and I'm like, hey, what's up guys? I'm super happy. And yeah. Like being real.
Yeah.
And by doing so, I created real relationships with people over time. Like the same people that get on my live Q&As that I do now are the same people that got on them 2 years ago.
That's amazing.
And I feel like I know those people, and more importantly, they feel like they know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really key. And I think that a lot of people don't realize like how social media can be used for that, because everyone's always trying to entertain or provide value that they actually can't provide. But in reality, like you could use it to self-reflect, right? Like you could set goals, hold yourself accountable, and then later on self-reflect. Yeah. And it's a tool that a lot of people don't use for that, which is, it sucks.
I think that's huge too, because not only are you like setting goals, but you're setting them for everyone to see. So if you fall short, you don't just say, oh, I can just hit it next week, or I came 10 short, whatever. No, you're going to go back and say, I let these people down. I failed myself. And you're just going to go that much harder. Which is
the ultimate personal accountability. Like,
right.
Like as even like to break it down to an even like more basic example. The other day, I just woke up on a Saturday morning And I was like, you know what? I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to run further than I've ever ran before today morning.
Wow.
And the furthest I'd run at that point was 7 miles. Like I'm not, if you look at me, I'm not a running, like I'm a big dude.
Yeah.
And the first I'd run 7 miles. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to run 8 miles. And I was like, oh, as soon as I said it, I'm like, crap, I don't want to do that. Like, it's going to be miserable. I hate running. But I jumped on Instagram stories and I'm like, what's up, guys? Saturday morning. I'm about to go run the furthest I've ever run before. I hope I survive, but I'll jump back on when I'm done. And literally just that small act of putting it out there on my stories, like I knew I was going to get called out.
Yeah.
And like, I promise you, as I was running and I'm on mile 4 and I'm on mile 5 and I'm on mile 6 and I'm approaching mile 7 and I'm getting close to where it's the furthest I've ever gone. I promise you that the only reason I did it is because I had put it out there. And people can look at that and they can say like, oh, you didn't have the self-motivation to do that. You had to put it out there. I'm like, so like, I did it.
Yeah. And really,
like, what does it matter?
No one actually has that anyways. They could say they do, but they really don't. And I think that's the biggest problem with people that are setting goals. Like everyone wants to set these goals, have these big goals to achieve, but it's not really a goal if there's no accountability behind it. Because what's the motivation behind getting it done? Like, and I think that's why so many people fall short of their goals and then also stop to set goals.
It's 100%. Like this year for me, I've looked at every area of my life and I've implemented accountability in an actual person that's holding me accountability in all areas. Like with my faith, I have a guy that I do a devotion with every 2 weeks that comes in and he keeps me accountable. Like, how are things going over the last 2 weeks with your faith? And he's very blunt and like holds me to that. With my fitness, like I hated working out in the mornings and I never wanted to do it because I don't like working out in the mornings. And so I, finally after 7 years of working out alone, I hired a trainer and I'm working out with that trainer now Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 6 o'clock in the morning. The only reason I show up is because I know he's there waiting for me. I don't want to be there. I don't like when I wake up, I'm like, oh, the last thing I want to do is work out this morning. But the fact that he's going to be sitting there looking at his watch going, where the heck is Tyler, is enough motivation for me to get there. And then in my business and like every single area of my life, it's implementing that accountability because you're right. It's the only way. And, not that you can't be self-motivated. Like if you're self-motivated to do that stuff, like that's awesome. But the whole key of self-awareness is understanding where you need it.
Yep.
And then actually applying it.
That's so true.
I think that's a big part of like us as a duo. I mean, if one of us starts lacking or not doing what we're supposed to be doing, we just get on each other and like shoot a text, like do this, get this done. And it just works out.
Yeah, it's huge. And I mean, that everybody needs that. Like back when I was selling every day, like I used to call it like a running buddy, like someone that was doing what I was doing, like in sales that I could talk to on a regular basis and they would push me. I would push them. I could call when things were bad and just vent to, and I could call when I just absolutely crushed a meeting. You always need that friend, whether it's a coworker, you need someone that you can celebrate with. Like I don't have a lot of people that I could, at that time, like, you can imagine, like I'm going from being dead broke. Like I'd been broke for like 2 years, going from just sales job to sales job and just, again, playing the blame game and as an excuse to be lazy. And, you can imagine going from that to like having months where I made like $75,000 in a month. Like that was freaking exciting. But like, you don't want to be that guy that like you're calling up your friend and like, bro, dude, I just made 75,000 this month. And they're like, screw you. Like, I don't care. Like you need that person you can call that's going to be like, dude, that's freaking awesome. Like how incredible is it that you just made as much this month that you made last year?
Yeah.
So freaking awesome. I'm so proud of you. Like to have someone like that, that you guys can push each other to get better and to level up, and that can genuinely celebrate each other's successes is freaking huge, man.
Definitely.
Exactly.
So we're going to move into a different sector here. It's just fitness. So obviously you're super passionate about fitness. So we're just wondering how you got started on your journey and kind of some tips for people who are maybe trying to improve or aren't too happy with where they're at in their fitness life.
Yeah. I mean, patience is key. A lot of people will ask me like, dude, like, how'd you get, this and how'd you get that? And I'm like, I don't know, like 20 years of working out. Like, I mean, it's some stuff just does take time. It can't, 9 women can't make a baby in 1 month. But it's consistency over a long period of time. I think the big thing that people struggle with is staying consistent in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more difficult to get back in once you've been there for a while and fell off than it is to get in the first place.
Yeah.
And so the key is just to make sure that what you're doing is sustainable. These people that go to the gym, they spend 2 hours and they're doing like all this stuff. It's just not sustainable for a normal lifestyle unless it's your full-time job.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out a way that fits into your lifestyle, and that can be something you can commit to long-term, that it's not like, hey, for 3 months I'm going to do this, then I'm going to kind of fall back and gain everything that I just lost, or lose all the gains that I had just gained. And then I'll go for another 3-month stint here and there. You have to find something that fits into your world and fits into your daily routine. And really it is your lifestyle that you can commit to long-term, because it's the only way you're going to be able to make it work. And so for me, again, it's all about accountability. It's about setting those structures in place so that okay, it's Tuesday, I work out at 6 a.m. And no matter what is going on in my life, I work out at 6 a.m. on Tuesdays. It's just a lot of times people just kind of walk through life aimlessly and say, well, I should work out today. Cool. And then all of a sudden the day gets away from them and it's 5 and then it's 6, 7 p.m. They're like, man, I should really go to the gym. And then it just doesn't happen, where you have to make these things non-negotiable.
Right.
You have to set these things in your schedule and time block everything out to where that from this time to this time on these days, that is what I do no matter what. I don't care if the freaking president of the United States said he wants to have a personal meeting with me, that it's going to have to be afterwards, because that's when I'm at the gym. Like that's my gym time. It's the only way that you're going to be able to commit to it long term, because you'll always fall back. You'll always let that slip. And the second that you let it slip once, then it slips a little further the next time, slips a little further the next time. And next thing you know, you're completely out of the game. So it's all about consistency.
Yep. I think for me, like the gym is my release. Like if I'm stressed out or I'm worried, I just go to the gym and let all that out, just work out. So it's not really always the results. It's more of just letting go of all those negative kind of energies,
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise that when I was in that low point of my life, that I was the fattest and most out of shape that I've ever been.
Yep.
And it just, one feeds into the other. And for me, and someone asked me this the other day, and it was the first time I had been asked, they said, when you went through that transformation, did you start with your mind and body first and then business? And that is what I did. Selfishly though, I was like newly single and I was looking in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, you are disgusting. No one is going to want to date you. And so you should probably take care of that first. So, it was kind of vain a little bit, but in the process of getting back in shape, and I lost like 70 pounds in like 6 months. But over the process of doing that, built up way more than physical strength, built that mental strength that I ultimately needed once I did go head first into sales and that role that I took from there.
70 pounds in 6 months. What did you like? How did you approach that? Like, that's just
it was 2-a-day workouts. It was fasted cardio in the mornings, and then some type of weight training in the afternoons. And I was doing a ketogenic diet, so no carbs, no sugar.
Right.
And that was it. That's the way my body responds best to a ketogenic diet. It's just something I've learned about myself. I'm on a ketogenic diet now. And carbs and sugar for me are just, they just don't work. And so eliminating those allows me to burn fat rapidly and still retain or gain muscle as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you should see the before and after picture. It's disgusting. I hate looking at it because like the person,
it's motivation though.
It is motivation, but like I don't even like looking at that before picture because like that person was a very sad person.
Right. Yeah. So how do you kind of keep the right mindset? Like if you ever don't close a sale or you have a bad day, like how do you sit back, and if you are negative, how do you dig yourself out of it?
I think, specifically in sales, it's so important to have a short memory. Whether it's day to day or whether it's meeting to meeting. There's sometimes where I'll have like rapid fire meetings back to back to back to back to back. And you can't let the failure or success of one carry over into the other. You have to look at each opportunity as a brand new, fresh opportunity to absolutely do your best. And so that for me is huge. And having a short memory. And then, a lot of people ask me, how do you stay so motivated? How do you stay so motivated all the time? And I'm like, man, I'm not at all.
Yeah.
There are plenty of days where I wake up and I don't feel motivated. It ultimately is discipline that makes a difference. It's having the discipline to know that there are things like, any good system will show you the things that you need to do every single day to succeed in whatever it is that you're going after. And it's making that commitment through discipline of saying that, hey, no one cares if you feel like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it anyway. Like, do it anyway. The first time I heard that was from Andy Frisella, who's become a mentor of mine. And this idea of just do it anyway. Like, no one cares how you feel. No one cares if you don't want to. No one cares if you don't feel like it. No one cares if you're tired. No one cares if if you're sick. Like, you just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about those defining moments. Defining moments sounds like it's some like huge, like great, like earth-shattering event, but those defining moments are throughout your day. They're, hitting snooze versus getting up and your alarm goes off.
Yep.
It's, choosing to go to the gym instead of, hanging out and doing nothing. It's, that 30 minutes after lunch where you can kind of have that kind of lazy period where you're just scrolling through social media, or you could get right back to work. Like, they happen, so many times throughout a day, but each time that you make the right decision in those defining moments, it builds momentum into the next, which builds momentum into the next. Yeah. And you look at your day and you just think about back to all those different moments. And if you can be aware enough to understand when those moments are happening, you can say, man, I had like 10 moments today where I could have gone either way. And, 7 out of the 10, I did the right thing. Well, then I won the day. And then you look at your week that way and your month that way. And ultimately that's how you win the year, is by stacking those defining moments and using that momentum in your favor.
Yeah. It
That's
just
amazing,
builds
yeah.
confidence with yourself, which is like huge.
Absolutely. Like, there's no better feeling than momentum.
Yep.
It's the greatest feeling on earth. You feel like there's nothing, like you feel completely unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just because you've made the right decisions over and over and over and over until those things become second nature, where you don't have to think about it anymore. You just are doing the right things and don't have to like consciously say like, I could do this, I could do that. You just start doing that every time.
Right. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No.
All right. So I was going through your Instagram last
Yeah.
night, and I saw something that really stuck out to me was your little kicks of the day video. So for me personally, I love shoes. Like, my mom doesn't get it. My friends don't really get it, but like sneakers are just like more than an object you put on your feet. So they're motivation to me, obviously, to like buy as many expensive shoes as I want, which I obviously can't right now. So that's what's pushing me to go forward. So what do shoes mean to you?
So it's something we've just recently started doing because we were trying to look at my life and like try to look at what are the interesting areas of my life. And somebody just asked me like, what are the things that you just like and, enjoy? And I was like, well, I really like shoes. And they're like, what do you mean you like shoes? I was like, oh, no, I mean, I have a lot of sneakers. They're like, well, what do you mean a lot? I'm like, I don't know, like 75, 80. Like, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I like shoes. And they're like, why are you not talking about this? Like, why are you not showing people this? I'm like, I don't know. I never thought about it. And so because of that, we've recently gone all in on showing people. But it's given me some time to reflect on like why it is a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think growing up, and I was very fortunate growing up, I had a dad that is the hardest worker I know. And still to this day is the hardest worker that I've ever been around. And so, he always provided, like we didn't lack anything, but still getting a new pair of shoes was a big deal. Like, like school year's coming up and you're going to go get those fresh new Nikes and like put them on and you're just like, oh my God, they like feel so good. And, you like walking in with your chest out, you're like, yeah.
It's like you're reborn.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it was just a big deal. And it didn't happen. Like, even though like we, my family did well, like it didn't happen all the time. It was like a couple times a year, you got, a pair of new shoes.
Exactly.
And so, as I've gone through this transformation to where, financially I am doing well, I was thinking back, I was like, I just want to feel that all the time.
Yep, exactly. Like, whenever I get a new pair, it's just like the best feeling ever.
I mean, it like literally when we get off of this podcast, I am headed over to my guy because I've got this connect that can get any shoe, and he's got the new Jordan infrareds and the Crimson Jordan 1s.
Yep.
He's got both of those sitting there waiting for me, and I freaking cannot wait to get there and get them and put them on my feet, to be honest. And so, I mean, for me, it's it is a little bit of a way to like reward myself. The other thing too, though, is like 15 months ago, I quit drinking. So I haven't taken a sip of alcohol in like 15 months. And so there's no other areas in my life that's like a guilty pleasure or like something like that would be perceived as like an addiction. There's nothing. I'm like, so if I can be addicted to something, then addicted to shoes sounds like a pretty safe thing to be addicted to. At least that's what I tell my wife. And she's now starting to understand. And we're now like constantly rebuilding shelves in our closet because we're just constantly running out of room. But I don't know. I like it. I just, like right now, the ones I'm wearing are some of my favorites. And it's just, it's something different. Like not everybody does it.
What's your favorite pair, like of all time? Maybe that you have, and then maybe one that you don't yet have that you want to get.
One of my favorites here recently was the Jordan Rookie of the Years. I really loved those.
Tan, they're brown, right?
Yep. But these right now that I'm wearing the show you here. Wearing these
the off-white, okay.
Off-white
those are
Vapor Max, but the off-white the UNC Jordan 1s, these are probably my favorite that I have.
I have those as well. I haven't worn them yet.
Those are sweet. I really want the red and white ones though. I mean, literally, like there's 12 pairs of shoes right now that I can tell you that I need.
I think goes for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the Super Bowl, but those Travis Scott Jordan 6s, the green.
The camo, like,
it has that little pocket on the side. Like, as soon as I saw those, I'm like, oh my gosh. But like the problem is like they come out with a new pair of Jordans every 35 seconds now.
I know. I just got the pink Zoom fly off whites. I'm like, all right, I'm done for a while. Then I see a picture of the Galaxy rookies that are set to come out, and I'm like, well, I need those. And
like But I mean, to me, that's again, it's fun, and like I wear them all. Like I don't keep them in the box. Like I take them out of the box, I throw the box away, I put them on my shelf. Like I wear them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that point where I got plenty of friends that they buy two pair, one to just put away and one to wear, and I'm like, I'm not to that level yet. But anyways, we'll see. It's fun.
Definitely. So you make some like really cool videos for the Kicks of the Days and among other things on your Instagram. So I was just wondering what goes behind making amazing video content like that.
So that's all, the team that we've built. That first whole year, 2017, every single post was created really on my iPhone. This is definitely not something I would recommend doing, but all of them were made while I was driving, because I was constantly driving and traveling. But it was using different apps, sometimes like 3 or 4 apps, all, kind of go from this one to that one to make a post. And then we started adding to our team. And so now I've got a team of 4. I've got a videographer that travels with me 24/7, and a video editor and a graphic designer that's also like project management type person. And, we're just trying to level up constantly. And so, the quality, we always want it to get better. And we really look at it very uniquely. We talk about in every meeting that we have, it's about scaling impact. So the majority of people that are putting out content, the goal is for there to be a conversion for a transaction, like to sell something or to sign up for something or to join some mastermind or ebook or, whatever it may be. For us, it's literally our ROI is the impact that the content is having on people. So we look at the comments and the messages that we get from someone that, 6 months ago stumbled across a post and now they've been following for, 6 months, and this and this has happened in their life as a direct correlation of the changes that they've made through the content. Like that's the stuff that we care about.
That's awesome.
And it's not, this is not like my own doing. It's literally just following Gary Vaynerchuk's blueprint, but I just don't know of anyone that's done it to the degree that we're doing it at the stage that I'm doing it. Like it's one thing for like a Ed Milet. You guys know Ed Milet?
Yep. Of course.
So there's one thing for Ed Milet to come on the scene 18 months ago and to be like the fastest growing influencer on social media when he's the freaking top 50 under 50 net worth in the United States.
Yeah.
Like, and he's still selling stuff, but like, even if he wasn't, like, it's one thing for him to be like, yeah, I'm giving away all this content for free. I'm like, you're the top 50 under 50 net worth in the country. If you didn't give away tons of content for free, you'd be the worst guy ever. It's one thing. So it's one thing for him to come on the scene and do that. It's another thing for someone that's on their way up, like someone
Right.
that's still growing, still leveling up, that's not worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, to be willing to do that, because it is a direct opportunity cost for me. Like, I know the amount of money that I am giving up by doing this. Not only that, I know the amount of money we're spending doing this. Like, we'll probably spend 300 grand this year on ad spend, and our team of now 4 people that are creating content and all the different things and events that we go to and
Wow.
different stuff, knowing that there will be $0 brought in.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's rare. Like, I just don't think anybody's doing it. And this whole idea that Gary talks about, whoever holds their breath the longest wins, basically meaning, like, if you don't have to monetize, if you can possibly not monetize, like, the longer you can do that, whenever you do, ultimately, is going to be the biggest payoff. And I'm getting to the weird place where I'm like, well, what if I never have to monetize? Because if I never have to monetize, it means that all the other businesses that I'm involved in are probably doing really well.
Right.
Yeah, and that should be the goal, right?
Yeah. And so it's, if you look at it that way, and I'm extremely transparent about that, and people know that. And I think it's just this idea that, the majority of people, they say, okay, well, I've got my career and I've got this stuff on social media. If there's an hour that I take away from my career, then I have to make that up in the hour that I'm spending here. So that means I'm going to have to sell something or do something to make it worth my time. I just chose to go all in on my career to be able to fund all the extra stuff and to not even worry about it. Like, I literally don't even think about it. And if we decide to monetize one day in a big way, then I just know that however many years I didn't, it will be exponentially greater return when I do than it would have been had I monetized all that time.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's just rare.
So other than Gary Vee, are there any other like influencers on social media that you kind of try to model your content around, or?
Gary's the biggest, just because I respect, like, most people don't even realize how genius he really is, and what he's really doing on a macro scale, and the impact that he's making on millions and millions of people is so big. So, I mean, he's the main one, but I've got plenty of others, some of which have become friends. Like Gerard Adams is a good friend of mine. He's got, incredible content. One of my coaches is Sean Whalen. His message is like nothing else that's out there. It's very raw. It's very in your face. It's very aggressive. Andy Frisella, he's again, like, played a huge role in my life. And I like the fact that, he tells the story all the time about the first 7 years not making over like $600-700 a month. And now he's killing it. But he tells those stories about how it wasn't easy, about how it takes a long time, and about how it's difficult to be successful. Off the top of my head, there's not that many more that I really thought. The more content I create, the less I consume. Like, I really don't scroll through much at all anymore. We're just so heads down focused on what we're putting out that I don't really have enough time to look at other people's stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what are some specific apps that you use for video content, just for our audience if they're looking to get into it?
Some of the apps that I use, like, I use Videorama a lot. Specifically to put stuff into a vertical form to use for Instagram stories. Because to me, Instagram stories is where all the attention is at right now. And I love Instagram stories. I just don't think people are scrolling up and down anymore on Instagram. They're all scrolling right to left, because it gives you a little bit more real view of what's going on. So I focus heavily, on Instagram stories, but Videorama, Typorama. The one I use to edit most photos is called Snapseed. There's one called Mosho that's interesting. It makes these little slideshows, and it already incorporates all these effects that would take forever if you were actually doing it on your own. But there's tons. Like, every now and then I'll just go to the App Store and I'll just look at the top charts for like photography.
Right.
And I'll just kind of check out a few here and there and maybe add some to the mix. But now we're doing a lot of stuff on a little bit more professional level. So I don't do as much of that on my own anymore. But you can do some stuff through apps where like you would not be able to tell the difference between that and someone that took 3 hours and, Photoshop on it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
So how did you first decide to get into podcasting?
So it's an interesting story. Like people ask me all the time, like, so how many views or downloads are you getting or this and that? And I'm like, I have no idea. Like I've never even looked at the analytics. And we've got the Sales Rules podcast, which we're on like episode 104 comes out. The Breadwinner podcast, we've got like, I don't know, 46 or 47 episodes. The sole reason I started a podcast was to have an excuse to talk to interesting people that are doing cool things.
Yep.
Probably very similar to you guys.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
To shoot somebody a DM and be like, hey man, I'd love to talk to you for 30 minutes next week. Let me know when you're available. They're like, what? Like, who are you? But to say like, hey, I've got this podcast and this is the stuff we talk about. And here's the past guests that have been on and would love to have you on my podcast next week. It takes 30 minutes in and out. We use Skype or Zoom or whatever. And then they're like, oh yeah, sure. And it just gives me an excuse to talk to them. And that's for me. I do not comprehend information by reading. I'm not a reader. I'm a little better with audio. So I do a lot of audiobooks and I listen to tons of podcasts and YouTube series, but I'm more of a person that learns from the experience of actually having conversations with people. And I learn so much just by getting to know other people and hearing their stories. And so that's really the only reason. Like, I just want to meet people, and it's not always like, business. Like, I just want to meet people that are doing what they were born to do. And whether that's an artist or a musician or an entrepreneur or whatever, I just want to find people, because that's what I'm most interested in figuring out is like, how can I live my life based on operating out of my gifts, and what does that look like? So I just want to meet other people that are doing that and hear their stories and their struggles and try to get them to be as authentic and transparent as possible. And that's really it. I was fortunate to have Andy Frisella as my first guest on the podcast, which was cool. And it's just kind of grown from there. We've got a few cool guests lined up here in the next few weeks. And really this year we're putting a big focus on the podcast to get that out there more. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, guys, if you're listening now, we're going to put the links in the show notes for his podcast. So we definitely recommend checking them out because he's done a great job so far with it.
Appreciate it.
So who would you say is your favorite guest so far?
Oh man. I'm gonna have to look back through here. Let me pull it up. I mean, Andy Frisella was awesome. The fact that he was willing to do it on the first episode was awesome. Let's see. An interesting one was a lady by the name of Jill Stelfox. If you just saw a picture of her, she looks just like, any ordinary kind of like mom. But this lady is like a savage business person, like unbelievable. I mean, she raised like 40 million in venture capital and turned it to over $1 billion. She's never had a loss, and she's just done some incredible things. One of the last businesses she was involved in, she closed a deal with the NFL. So she worked directly with the NFL for like 5 years with this technology that does all the on-field player tracking, like the velocity and speed and all that stuff on the players. And the relationships that she's built from there it was just the coolest story. Hearing that. David Meltzer, you guys had David Meltzer? David Meltzer's awesome, man. I love him. He's a great, great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I saw you guys had Brody Kern too. He's become a good friend of mine.
Yep.
Caleb Campbell was a really, really good episode. He's a guy who played football at West Point, was drafted into the NFL, and then just kind of went to a rough place, was partying too much and missing practices and got cut from a couple of different teams.
Wow.
And there was a line in that podcast that really, really affected me in a major way. He said that after all this time, his entire life, like, hoping to one day play in the NFL, that what he realized is that when he got into the NFL, that he had gotten what he wanted, but he didn't want what he got.
Wow.
And that line right there, he got what he wanted, but he realized he didn't want what he got. Like when he said that, I was just like, I'm going to need to pause for a second and just let that sink in. Like,
yeah.
That was was huge, huge,
Wow.
huge. So that was good. Chris Paff drama. That was let's pause for a second. I got this freaking dude blowing leaves behind my office right now. All right, ready?
Yep.
So yeah, Chris Paff, that was a good one because he got real authentic, or real transparent with some stuff that he does not talk about a lot, some struggles that he went through a couple of years ago. So that was a really good one. Ryan Mickler from the Order of Man podcast.
Okay.
A really good one.
Familiar.
His podcast is like top 25 on iTunes always.
Yep.
They're huge. Man, all of them are so special to me in different ways. Like there's little moments in every podcast that I take from it that I'll remember forever. So
we can relate to that.
Yeah.
Have you got Gary Vee on, or you have plans to get him on?
I haven't gotten him on, man. Nah, I haven't. Before I started documenting anything on social media, this was like 3.5 years ago. It was when he was launching the Ask Gary Vee book.
Yep.
They did it at Andy Frisella's facility for First Form in St. Louis. And me and my business partners paid for this VIP deal. So after he spoke and Andy spoke, and afterwards we were going to be able to get in the conference room with Andy and Gary for an hour and just talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. And we got in there, it was like 11:30 or 11 o'clock at night. And it was me, my 2 business partners, 3 other guys that had paid as well, and then Gary and Andy. And we sat in there for 3.5 hours, sat in there till like 2:30 in the morning, just talking to him. And it was just incredible. Just the exact same person off screen that you see on the screen. And I got to spend some time with him at one of his events last year, and then just spent some time with him at one of his events 3 weeks ago as well. And so, I mean, he's incredible. But I haven't even asked. He's got so much going on. I don't really need to have him on. I mean, obviously I would love to, but I think that'll certainly happen one day as I continue. Like that's my goal, is to literally continue to play out the blueprint that he's laid out better than anybody else. That's the goal.
It's amazing.
And for him to be able to see that one day and be like, man, this dude did exactly what I've told everybody to do the exact way, and see what will come from it. Yeah.
So I was just interested in how you originally met Andy. Was it through that event, or did you know him prior to that?
I'd listened to the MFCEO podcast, forever. Like it's one of my favorite. It's definitely top 2, top 3 favorite podcasts, probably number 1 or 2 out there. And just through DM, like here and there, we would start DMing every now and then, and he'd comment on some stuff and like some stuff, and just kind of created a conversation. And then getting to meet in person that night at that event, and then ended up coming back. My business partner and I ended up coming back to his office a couple months later and talking to him in further depth about a business that we were involved in. And he's been someone that I could reach out to and would provide me some real raw feedback, which is, awesome that he was willing to do that, because he's pretty much as real as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And I just respect him tremendously. And so I caught him at a really good time. He was giving me some feedback, and I was telling him about some stuff going on and telling him about a new podcast that I was just starting called the Breadwinner Podcast. And it was just like the perfect timing for me to be like, so obviously I have to ask you if you honor me and be the first guest. And it kind of caught him in a situation where he really couldn't say no. Like if he would have said no, it would have been a really big dick move. And I just kind of caught him in a really good moment and capitalized on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you kind of working on now? Like now that you've gained momentum with your Instagram, what are you trying to do moving forward outside of like the podcast?
Yeah. We're always trying to scale the impact that we're having on social media. So just, really defining some different lanes for me, one of them being sneakers, one of them being fitness, the other was being, the insurance and the business, and the others being, family and faith, and kind of having different posts coming out within those lanes and kind of creating more of a structure to it. But on the business side, I mean, we just launched a new agency, a new life insurance agency a couple months ago. So we're heavily involved in getting that up and running. We just launched a nonprofit that just got the 501c3 designation, which took a year and a half going back and forth with attorneys to get that. And that's a huge passion of mine, is that nonprofit and what it stands for and what we're going to do with it. Long term, long term, it's going to be a huge part of my legacy that I leave behind. And so there's a lot going on, and we've got over 200 life insurance agents across the country that we lead and train, and I coached all of them on a process called life goals, which basically helps them set goals in all 4 areas of their life, and I hold them accountable monthly. So next week I'll be doing all my life goals accountability calls with our agents, and they're very emotional, difficult conversations to have, and I do them like 7 to 10 of them a day, back to back to back, and it's difficult because I'm holding them accountable to things that they've said that were their goals and their relationships, their mind, body, and their business. And we just go through each of them and say like, hey, so how's date night going with your wife every Friday? And they're like, oh, we weren't able to do it this last Friday. I'm like, well, it says on here date night every Friday. So why didn't you do it? Well, this and this happened. I'm like, okay, well, this was supposed to be non-negotiable. So let's figure out a way for that not to happen again. And let's go ahead and sit down and let's plan out your date night for next Friday while we're here. And really just holding them accountable to these things that they said that they wanted to do. And, it ends up being, some of the most impactful conversations I've ever had with people, which is awesome. And so that's a big part of what I'm doing with our agents. And just trying to keep all these plates spinning.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just have one last question before we do a little lightning round to wrap up.
Sure.
What does success mean to you? Like, if you could put a definition to success in terms of your own words, what would you describe it as?
Success to me is being able to wake up every day and do what I love to do, which means operating out of my gifts. To have an infrastructure and an environment created to where I can do what I was born to do every day. Mm-hmm. And that I can go all in on that, and to where it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
That to me is success. And there's not a monetary value that's put on that, because, it doesn't really matter at that point, because to me, happiness ultimately is the key. And I know plenty of successful people on paper that are miserable. Mm-hmm. And I just don't plan on being one of those people. So I'm focused on being happy along the way.
That's awesome. Okay, so like Christian mentioned, we're going to go into a lightning round. It's basically 4 quick questions. You just answer off the top of your head, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. So the first one is just like, if you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what's like a word of advice you'd give to him?
Be patient. Be patient. It's going to take longer than you think. And don't allow what you see other people doing influence how fast or how quickly you need to do what you're doing. Just let time happen, and just trust the process.
Awesome. Okay. And what was the worst piece of advice and the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The worst piece of advice was probably, when I started documenting my life on social media, and there were so many people that said that I needed to be careful and putting all this stuff out there, and that there were certain things that just didn't need to be talked about. And I've just found that the more vulnerable I can be, the more truth that I can expose about myself, the more audacity it gives other people to be vulnerable and tell the truth as well. And those have been some of the greatest moments that I've ever had, have been the most uncomfortable moments for me, but the impact that it's made on others. And so I just, there's no ego for me. Like, it's just, we do what we do and what impact it can create in others. And we know that, there's only one truth, and it's not just the truth when it's convenient and the truth when it's comfortable. It's just the truth, and that's it. And so, living in that will always, always, always work out in the end. And anyone that tells you otherwise is just wrong.
Perfect.
Best advice. Let's see. The best advice I've gotten, is probably I've gotten so much advice from those mentors. Those mentors are now my business partners, and really they're more like family. And one of the best pieces of advice I think one of them has given me is this, and it has to do with ego as well. But it's this line: I'd rather be rich than right. I'd rather be rich than right. There's been so many circumstances throughout these last 4.5 years where I could have fought against something or someone because I wanted to be correct. I wanted to be noted as right in the scenario. But the long-term effects of me trying to be right would have ruined the relationship, which would have led to money that I would have lost. And so this idea of I'd rather be rich than right. I'd rather be rich than right. Like, I don't have to be right all the time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just want to be successful, and I want to be looked on as someone that made a big impact. And that has nothing to do with the scorecard of who's right and who's wrong in my world.
Definitely. Okay, so the last question here is, if you could put a message or a quote on a billboard for the entire world to see, what would you put on it?
A message or quote on a billboard for the world to see. It would be this line right here. It would be, if you seek discomfort, the world will deliver you pleasure. If you seek comfort, the world will deliver you pain.
Wow.
That's great.
That's crazy.
Is that like a quote from someone, or is it just something?
It's just something that me and my business partners have always talked about, and I don't know where it came from, but man, it plays out so true every single time. Like, anytime that you're seeking comfort, it's the world will deliver pain.
The opposite, yeah.
Yep.
But anytime you seek discomfort, and we've just been on this mission over the last couple of years to get as uncomfortable as humanly possible on a daily basis. Like, that's the only way, by stretching and growing and embracing discomfort. It's the only way that you're going to grow. And this idea that the universe will never be indebted to you is huge.
Awesome.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, that wraps it up for us. If there's anything you want to add, feel free to. If you want to put some plugs in about where people can find you, your podcast, anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got a new website that's live. It's tylerjackharris.com. And everything on social media is at tylerjackharris, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Awesome, man.